On Capitol Hill are introducing new paid family leave legislation, and how one ministry is working to help babies born with opioid addictions. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. The GOP call to repeal and replace revived by President Trump. Welcome to Faith Nation. I'm John Jessup.
And I'm Jenna Browder. The president is calling on Republicans to quash the Affordable Care Act. This sudden move could cost millions of people to lose health insurance if lawmakers don't have another plan in place.
CBN News White House correspondent Ben Kennedy joins us with the details. Ben, how is the president describing this?
Well, John and Jenna, President Trump calls striking down Obamacare in the courts phase 1. He adds that a health care replacement plan will be ready once the law is gone.
Our message, very simply, is that we're with you. And the United States is going to continue to stand with you, stand with your courageous husband, and stand with freedom-loving people in Venezuela.
President Trump made a surprise turn by reigniting the Obamacare debate.
We're going to be the party of great health care, and the Democrats have let you down.
The first indication came Monday when the Justice Department agreed the Affordable Care Act is unconstitutional and should be thrown out.
Obamacare doesn't work. It's too expensive. And you take a look at everything with deductibles, it's a disaster. It's a disaster for our people. We're not going to allow it to go.
And I think what the president's doing is actually wise, which is focusing Republicans' attentions, because if it does happen and Republicans aren't ready with anything, that's when they're in trouble.
Also in trouble could be the nearly 13 million people covered under Obamacare's Medicaid expansion and 52 million people with pre-existing conditions. But the president says this move does not mean Republicans want to take away people's health care, adding that the repeal and replace plan would send grants to states for them to run their own health care insurance programs. Trump's effort to repeal Obamacare narrowly failed in the Senate back in 2017. What needs to change to pass this time around?
I think people have a lot more information and have spent a lot of time thinking about what could have gone a lot better in 2017. We have a plan that would lower health care costs and improve people's choices and make sure that we take care of the most vulnerable among us, people with pre-existing conditions.
It sounds like some Republicans aren't on board, something Marie Fishpaw of the Heritage Foundation hopes will change. House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy told President Trump that his new health care push makes no sense. Do you agree?
Well, I certainly think that Republicans ran for a very long time on addressing these problems, and I'd like to think that they'll be able to do so again.
Protecting and strengthening health care is why Democrats are here on day one.
Democrats made health care a prime campaign issue during the midterms and just introduced a new bill to strengthen the Affordable Care Act. It would make more middle-class people eligible for subsidies and even help lower-income recipients already in the system. And real quick, right off the top, that was Vice President Mike Pence talking about Venezuela. Interim President Juan Guaido, his wife, was here at the White House today. He was there with his support, again, towards the Venezuelan people. But back to this story for just a bit. The Democrat bill that they're proposing would no doubt pass the House, but not the Republican-controlled Senate. As for the president's plan, if it does in fact fail on Capitol Hill, once again, it could actually spell trouble for Republicans in 2020. Well, that's the latest here at the White House. Ben Kennedy, CBN News.
Thanks, Ben. The Trump administration is calling on Russia to end its support of Venezuelan dictator Nicolas Maduro and instead stand with interim President Juan Guaido. Today, Vice President Pence, while meeting with Guaido's wife, said the arrival of Russian troops in Venezuela this past weekend was, quote, a provocation, and that the Russian military should leave Venezuela immediately. Pence also reaffirmed the administration's support for Guaido's presidency.
Our message, very simply, is that we're with you. And the United States is going to continue to stand with you, stand with your courageous husband, and stand with freedom-loving people in Venezuela until your libertad is restored.
Guaido invoked the Constitution to assume the interim presidency back in January, move affirmed by the Venezuelan legislature, saying Maduro's re-election was illegitimate.
Well, what's being called a tense calm is taking place along the Gaza Strip tonight after days of rocket attacks and airstrikes between Hamas and Israel. No reports of casualties in the latest round of fighting, although 7 people were injured inside a house in Israel when a rocket from Gaza hit there. Israel and Hamas have fought 3 wars and had dozens of other fights since the Islamic militant group took control of Gaza back in 2007.
Well, for more on the situation in Israel, as well as the recent rise in anti-Semitism being seen here in the American political system, earlier today we sat down with New York Times bestselling author Joel Rosenberg.
Living in Israel, we asked him what he makes of the recent escalation with Hamas. Take a look.
It's just the consistent sadness, it really is the tragedy of Israel having withdrawn from Gaza in 2005, pulled all the settlers out, all of the army out, and said, here it is, there's Gaza, you've asked for it, it's yours. You've got beautiful beachfront property, you've got massive amounts of natural gas right off the coast. The people of Gaza could be rich, and they've got this beautiful, they could have tourism, it's a beautiful piece of land. But they've let themselves become controlled by a terrorist organization, Hamas, which has fired more than 15,000 rockets and missiles at us over the last number of years, and more than 100 in the last few days. So it ultimately doesn't harm us too much. Occasionally you have some real damage, but we've got rocket systems to shoot them down. But who's suffering most? It's the Palestinians who are under this slavery, this tyranny of Hamas, and they need to be liberated.
Joel, President Trump upended decades of foreign policy by officially recognizing the Golan Heights as Israeli territory. Can you talk a little bit about the significance of that?
Yeah, about time, but good for him. The president has done the exact right thing. Look, 52 years ago, in 1967, the Syrians tried to annihilate the Jewish people in Israel coming through the Golan Heights. And Israel was able to push them back and capture those heights. The Syrians tried again in 1973, again, a war of annihilation. But those heights gave us enough time to bog down the Syrian tanks and armored forces to get reserves up there. And again, narrowly, we defeated the Syrians in 1973. There is no reason why a country that's been engaged in genocide against its own people, Syria, with the help of Iran, which is threatening genocide against Israel, right? Wipe Israel off the map. Why would we give land back to these 2 regimes? And so Israel said in 1981, I believe it was, look, this is ours, and it's critical, strategically critical for our security. We can't ever give it back. You'd think that Israel's best friend in the world, the United States, might have recognized that need sooner, but I was a never Trumper in the campaign until the Thursday before the election, and I told President Trump this. But the reason I shifted was I hoped that he would keep his conservative promises. And my goodness, he has kept more promises on pro-life issue, on pro-Israel, than I ever imagined. And this is yet another, and he deserves an enormous amount of credit for doing it.
Joel, on the heels of AIPAC, both President Trump, Democrats, Republicans, everybody is talking about anti-Semitism. Yeah. How much of a problem is this? Well,
it's particularly a problem when you see numbers spiking around the country and on campuses and so forth. But it's worse of a problem when the leadership of a particular political party doesn't have the moral clarity to crush it, right? I commend Speaker Pelosi and Minority Leader Schumer for having strong words against anti-Semitism, but they couldn't condemn by name Congresswoman Omar for her horrific remarks. They wouldn't call her out. They didn't strip her of the Foreign Affairs Committee seat. And so you're really, in a sense, giving a pass to it. That means that it's going to grow.
A quick follow-up to that, because we're seeing President Trump and some Republicans really trying to use the controversy there as a wedge to court Jewish voters to come to the Republican Party. Now, it might not move the dial so much here in the United States, but I wonder how Jews in Israel view all of this.
Well, the president asked me when I was in the Oval Office a few weeks ago, how's the Jerusalem decision being received? I said, you're the king of Israel. I mean, right now, Israelis overwhelmingly love President Trump. They didn't know what they were going to get, and now they're overjoyed. I think the question is here in the United States, actually. Look, I'm Jewish. I'm from a Jewish family that was Democrats going way back. In the 80s, I voted for Gore. I voted for Dukakis. I know, but I moved. I began to think my values as an evangelical Jewish person do not fit with the modern Democratic Party. And you're beginning to see Democrats wonder. Most Democrats most Jews are Democrats, 70%, not because of the Israel issue. That had been bipartisan, and I hope it remains. They're Democrats because they're liberals. They're pro-abortion, they're pro-gay marriage, and some of them are pro-socialism, not all of them. But now they thought they were safe on the Israel-Jewish side. But now if the Democratic Party can't slam down and say, no, we will not tolerate under any circumstances anti-Semitism in our own party, you are going to have some Democrats begin to say, well, I'm not a big fan of Trump, but maybe the Democrats are not where I should be. And Howard Schultz might be the first to go, right? He's already moved out of the party into an independent status. It's a fairly famous Jewish American who had been Democrat and liberal for a long time, but is not comfortable with the party where it is now.
Another question for you. Many political observers point to the similarities between President Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu, Prime Minister of Israel. Both have bold agendas. Both are fighting against an ardent and loud opposition, and both face corruption charges and investigations. Why do these two men seem to share such a bond and have an affinity for one another?
Well, that's a lot of questions rolled into one. They have an affinity because President Trump actually has a deep love for Israel and the Jewish people. And, there were a lot of people during the campaign and Charlottesville and others where they said the president was a closet anti-Semite. It's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, the man's daughter, Ivanka, whom he adores, converted to Orthodox Judaism. The president clearly adores his son-in-law, Jared. He's got Orthodox Jewish grandkids. The man is not an anti-Semite. He loves Israel and the Jewish people. And any prime minister of Israel, I think he will get along very well with. He's known Bibi Netanyahu for many years, decades. So it's not surprising. They have a similar worldview in many areas. I will say that as we come up on the April 9th elections, I will get home to Israel from this book tour from the Persian Gamble on April 9th, and I've got to decide who to vote for. I work for Benjamin Netanyahu, but I got an issue. He's got 3 criminal indictments on 3 entirely different corruption cases. It's not 3 indictments on one case. It's 3 different cases. His wife is also under indictment for a different case. Now, even if you give him the presumption of innocence, which we should, it's going to take a lot of time to work your way through exonerating yourself. And the question is, when you are facing existential threats from Iran and from Hezbollah and from Syria and Russians and Hamas, is it the right time to be the prime minister when you've been it for so long? That's a big issue. And there are some other issues, but certainly Netanyahu is facing the biggest political fight of his life.
Well, Joel, thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely. It's great to be with you guys.
Come back.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, thanks.
Well, new parents could be getting some long-promised relief. Today, Republican lawmakers unveiled a new plan for paid family leave. Capitol Hill correspondent Abigail Robertson has more on what's included in the new proposal. Abigail.
Thanks, Jenna. This proposal is designed to allow new moms and dads to draw from future Social Security benefits while caring for a new baby.
This was an issue that 5 years ago was not discussed.
Now, Republicans want to make good on helping growing families.
We are the only industrialized country that does not offer guaranteed paid family leave.
The new plan draws on existing retirement funds without creating a new government benefit.
We have a lot of kids in Utah. People are having babies in Utah.
Utah's Mitt Romney is a co-sponsor.
So it's something that doesn't add to the national debt. We're not borrowing more money. It also doesn't raise taxes.
The proposal gives new parents up to 3 months of Social Security benefits, which they would pay back by delaying retirement for about 6 months per child.
They can also pay back at a future time.
Two-parent households can transfer those benefits between mom and dad.
The majority of homes with two parents both are working.
It's an issue close to the president and his daughter.
Paid leave is just good policy.
Ivanka Trump's push for paid family leave is a long-held priority.
I am also proud to be the first president to include in my budget a plan for nationwide paid family leave so that every new parent has the chance to bond with their newborn child.
And her dad made it one of his State of the Union highlights.
I stood up and shouted yes at President Trump's State of the Union address when he advocated for paid parental leave.
Missouri Republican Ann Wagner is working with House Democrats on the bill.
I see this as a bipartisan option.
Now, there are 3 Republican bills in Congress geared towards paid family leave and at least one other bill from Democrats. But there's hope here on the Hill that between these dueling bills, lawmakers will finally find a compromise to bring these families relief.
All right, Abigail Robertson for us on Capitol Hill. Thanks, Abigail.
Thank you.
Coming up, a look at the new White House executive order designed to protect America's electrical grid.
Well, a new executive order signed by President Trump aims to protect America's electrical grid against electromagnetic pulses.
The White House says the order is the first ever to, quote, establish a comprehensive policy to improve resilience to EMPs. For more now, we turn to the newest member of our CBN News team, national security correspondent Eric Phillips. Eric, not everyone is aware of the term EMPs. What does that mean?
Well, we don't want to get too scientific, right?
Sure.
Too much into science. But in short, EMP stands for electromagnetical pulse. Now, that really is just an intense burst of electromagnetic radiation. There are 2 ways that this can be caused. One is through some type of natural occurrence, maybe a natural disaster or something like that. But the second and really more sinister way, the one that has everyone concerned and why the president signed that executive order yesterday, has to do with nuclear weapons being detonated at high altitudes. When that happens, it can cause what we're terming as an EMP attack. And, you know, that's the concern that the White House has and why they signed that executive order.
So, Eric, what kind of danger can they really cause? Obviously, you've kind of laid that out a little bit, but explain a little bit more.
Well, let's talk about, first of all, what it will not do. This EMP attack, this electromagnetic pulse attack, will not kill people like instantly. It's not like it happens and all of a sudden people die. But what it will do is it will send a burst of energy that will attack every single electric circuit, electric grid in our country. So we're talking about things like computers failing, bank accounts being inaccessible, transportation systems cut off, cities going completely black because of no electricity whatsoever. Think about fuel pumps, the inability to operate fuel pumps. All those types of things would be instantly impacted if, in fact, this EMP attack occurs. At least that's according to some experts. But I want to add a caveat here, and that is that some people are split. Some experts are split on exactly what would happen if this EMP attack were to happen. Some say that this is just, you know, like some sort of a conspiracy theory that you would find in a bad science fiction movie. But others say that if an EMP attack actually happened, it could kill up to 90% of the U.S. population.
Wow.
Well, the White House is not taking any chances, you can imagine.
Real quickly, what does this executive order do then?
So it definitely is being touted as the first ever comprehensive measure to try to address this issue. And so it does a few things. One, it instructs federal agencies to look at where these EMP threats could be and to determine ways to guard against those threats. And then 2, the idea is to reduce uncertainty and to mitigate or lessen potential impact. So you've got agencies like the White House Security Council, Homeland Security, as well as the State Department partnering with the private sector to try to really accomplish this. And the whole goal is to have some sort of plan in place to address this EMP threat within the next year.
Eric Phillips, we're happy to have you on the team.
Glad to be here.
Thanks, Eric. How one ministry is helping moms and their babies recovering from opioid addiction when we come back. Welcome back. Purdue Pharma, the maker of OxyContin, will pay the state of Oklahoma $270 million to settle a lawsuit over its alleged role in the nation's opioid crisis. Much of the money will go to fund a national opioid addiction center at Oklahoma State University, which will study addiction and treatment. The company still faces some 1,600 lawsuits from 35 states and hundreds of municipalities. The suits allege Purdue aggressively marketed the painkiller, contributing to a national crisis of opioid addiction and overdose.
Well, in the U.S., every half hour, a baby is born already addicted to drugs because their mother is hooked on opioids.
Maury Johnson brings us the story of one ministry working to help babies born into addiction.
Each day, hospital workers deal with babies born addicted to opioids.
They often are very unconsolable is probably the best way to describe it.
It can take around 2 weeks to wean these tiny victims off the drug. Then hospitals discharge the babies even though they still feel the after effects.
Most of the time the babies still go home with mom,
provided she promises to stay clean. A new mom who's withdrawing, taking care of a difficult baby who's also withdrawing, too often breaks under the pressure and falls into a dangerous relapse.
I believe unless the people of faith stand up, the opioid crisis is going to continue to overtake us.
That's why Christian counselor Dawn Hennessy started Angel Arms, a ministry helping both moms and babies recovering from addiction.
I believe, honestly, that God has called the people, his kingdom people, to save the lost, the broken, the orphans, the widows.
Here at Angel Arms, these volunteer snugglers focus on the little victims.
We love them. We do pray for them. And sometimes they just need held really tight when they're shaky, belly aches, coughing, spitting up a lot.
Thanks to medical training and help from above, they can help with the extreme agitation suffered by the babies.
Well, today, while his stomach was giving him a hard time, I was just whispering the name of Jesus in his ear. And yeah, I do pray over them while I'm holding them. But the name of Jesus is powerful.
Snugglers also give mom a break so other volunteers can focus on her.
There's a lot of hope. There's a lot of people I've worked with that have come out into recovery now, and there's a lot of children that we've been able to help.
Kathy Shively's addiction began, as many do, trying to ease the pain.
I have 3 dental implants, so the pain from the dental implants caused me to be prescribed lots of pain medication. So opiates became an addiction.
She brings little Connor here because these snugglers soothe him in a way no one else can.
It's overwhelming for family to watch an NAS baby because there are times when he's just so fussy and there's nothing that they could do. I've had to leave jobs and come home.
In addition to childcare, Angel Arms provides free baby supplies, helps moms find housing, and pursues anything that will promote stability.
And I really felt trapped, and I think that the heroin addiction, that's a good description of it. You just feel trapped, and you can't get out, you know, until you have somebody come along your side to help you.
In order for her child to receive care at Angel Arms, mom must get regular Christian counseling here.
What I tell my staff is you need to see them through the eyes of Jesus as broken people that need love. So we've actually experienced whole families coming to know Jesus just because of a little baby.
When I come here, it brings me encouragement. If I need to cry, they hear me cry. If I need to know what the next step is, they guide me in the next step.
Angel Arms never charges a fee because outside donors helped fund the ministry.
We just rely on what God gives us, and so far it's worked.
And as it grows, so does the need.
We have police officers calling us. We have drug court here in Pennsylvania. So we have judges calling us, attorneys, social workers. We have people from West Virginia, Ohio, Maryland calling us.
Fortunately, other faith groups are calling as well.
I do tell churches before we work with them, are you ready for the least of these to come into your congregation? And are you ready to put your arms around them and love them?
And Hennessy plans to expand because she knows help is needed beyond regular working hours. This large home was donated to Angel Arms. Once it's renovated, it'll be used as a residential program where people can stay overnight for weeks at a time. They're praying God will provide the resources for the big renovation. So while the opioid epidemic rages on, ministries like Angel Arms work to break the generational curse of addiction. Lori Johnson, CBN News.
You know, the opioid crisis is so huge. It's going to take a societal effort, so it's great to see the church and ministry stepping up, doing their part.
Really stepping up, yeah. Amazing story.
Yeah. Well, that's going to do it for tonight's Faith Nation.
Have a great evening.